7, I have Penn State. But another team similar to Notre Dame, like I brought up earlier, Penn State with Drew Allaire might be the most underrated player just because last year Franklin didn't have him taking shots downfield. It was more a dink and dunk. Now we are seeing him take shots downfield. So even though they didn't play well against Bowling Green this past weekend, I still think it's week 2 of they just need to get adjusted to everything going on. So once they get into the Big Ten play, they'll look fine. Number 8, I have Ole Miss. Ole Miss with Jackson Dart is Jackson Dart's in my top 5 for Heisman right now. He's playing phenomenal, and I know the opponent is, average group of 5 teams, FCS schools. That's why I'm a little reluctant. I would probably have them at about 6 or 7, a few spots higher. But I need to see them play an SEC caliber team before I can put them higher. Kind of similar with my 9 seed Alabama is the same, where week 1 they looked good, but week 2 against South Florida, it took them the first 3 quarters to kind of get everything under their belt. They were up 5 points in the fourth, 21-16 against South Florida, who a couple people have being a dark horse for the group of 5 spot in the playoff. So I'm high on Kalen DeBoer and with Jalen Milroe as quarterback. I need to see them play better competition and then look better against that better competition. So I could quickly have Ole Miss and Alabama replace Oregon and Penn State. Number 10 is when it starts to get interesting, because I feel like the SEC right now has 4 locks: Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss. I think they just look like playoff teams. And then with the Big Ten, I think they have 4, and in Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and USC. USC is my 10th team. With Miller Moss, going back to his first start against Louisville in the Holiday Bowl last year, he looked phenomenal, and I've seen little improvements, but we haven't seen a drop-off yet, which is very impressive. The only thing with USC is in the first 2 weeks, their defenses look great, and LSU is a great offense to prove that against, only holding them to 20 points. But once they have to get to an Ohio State, Penn State, even Michigan hasn't looked good on offense, but if they can prove it against Michigan, that would be huge. Week in, week out, they have to play tough offenses. So it'll be interesting. USC is a team I will continue to keep up with, have a close eye on, watch their games week in, week out, because they could be something special that no one really saw in the preseason. Team 11, now this was tough. The 11 seed was between Missouri and Tennessee. Nico Iamaleava for Tennessee looks like Hendon Hooker-esque from 2 years ago. Right now I have Missouri in the spot just because Tennessee, I don't know how good NC State is after that week 1 Western Carolina monstrosity of a performance. I wasn't high on NC State in the preseason. So once Tennessee gets into SEC play, if they can go 10-2, they're easily in. But right now with Missouri, I just look at the continuity they bring back from last year with Brady Cook as quarterback, with Luther Burden, the best receiver in college football. There hasn't been a drop-off, which is impressive with that, because I thought losing Cody Schrader would be a bigger issue than it has been for them. So right now the 11 seed is Missouri, but Tennessee could easily take over. Where it gets really interesting is the 12 spot. The group of 5 team I have right now is UNLV. Boise's a close second with Memphis coming in third, but UNLV, I was impressed. Week 1, going into Houston, beating the Cougars 27-7 with Matthew Sluka coming over from Holy Cross in the transfer portal. UNLV returning Ricky White at receiver. I'm so impressed with Barry Odom bringing over what he used at Missouri and Arkansas previously, because UNLV has never been a great football program. At best, they've been average. There was a 22-year stretch from 78 to 2000 where they didn't go to a bowl game even. So what he's done there, I think, will only improve. And with group of 5 teams, I look at how many power conference opponents they play. So far, they're 1-0, but they still have a lot ahead of them. In Syracuse, October 4th, goes to Vegas to play UNLV. That's a huge opportunity to add something to their resume. With Oregon State down the road, which is definitely a manageable game. So I just think UNLV has so much, especially in the next couple weeks, to look out for. Starting Friday with Kansas, they play at Kansas. It'll be an interesting bounce-back game for the Jayhawks to see how they'll look, because they still are a very talented team. But I think UNLV could catch them sleeping and could win 2 of those 3 remaining games, and I think that's enough if they go on and win the Mountain West. I don't think you can question that resume, and I don't think anybody else will have a better resume. So right now, UNLV I have in that spot, but you have to give a shout out to Boise. I mean, Maddox Madsen at quarterback I think is a little questionable. He makes some decisions that make me scratch my head, but Ashton Jeanty is by far the best player in college football right now. Just some stats to look at are Ashton Jeanty has 459 rushing yards. That is the most through the first 2 games in 15 years. And of course, the player who has that record right now 15 years ago plays for Navy, so a run-only offense basically. And Ashton Jeanty was only 20 yards shy of that, so you have to watch out for him. And another stat on top of that is Jeanty has ran for 9 touchdowns. That hasn't happened in the first 2 games since Ricky Williams in 1998, where he won the Heisman. So Jeanty is someone to look out for sure. The issue at Boise is I don't think they have enough games where they can make statements. They have Washington State visiting them in a couple weeks at the end of the month, and Oregon State later in the season, but they just don't have the non-conference games where they can get wins. They were close in Oregon. That would have been a big deal, but I think close losses don't say as much as wins that aren't as good against opponents as good as teams like Oregon, but still really impressive wins. So it'll be very interesting to see how it'll play out the next 2 months.